So here's a little walking tour through the garden. It's gonna go a little fast and real casual, but the stone's gonna get buried a little more because this is like the muddiest place that we have because we get all the water flowing down the hill. It flows through here, floods my office a little bit, and then goes over here where it hits the driveway, and a couple times in it downpours, it's a couple inches deep for a while, which is always fun when I have to go down the driveway to get my next client. This is the compost area. This one here is in use. We are harvesting out of it and putting it in the garden. And this one here is still cooking. And these are some things that aren't quite wonderful enough to eat anymore, that we just got too much food and these went bad, but they're going to go into the next food. This dude right here is one of Carol's nemesis. She has a strong reaction when things surprisingly hurt her. Some leftover childhood stuff, I think. And this guy is the kind you read about. These thorns are serious thorns. And so I keep it trimmed back just so my wife won't get hurt by it. I think if she gets hurt enough by it, she's going to eventually come down here and cut it out one day. Which, I like the bush, but you got to be careful. This is, I don't know what to call this. It's a ton of asparagus that naturally falls over the pathway. And it's really wet today, but I can move it back. And if I want, I'll get some bamboo or something and help it stand up. But that's the first pathway. Here's the second path. I stuck some comfrey there because we're getting some washout, and now the comfrey is, it's up to my knee right here. Pretty good size. Walking down the second pathway, which Clover does us a favor, and it paves it pretty well. And you can see we're coming up on one of the garden's predators. If he had free reign of this backyard, it'd probably be free of crickets and grasshoppers, which I wouldn't like that, but he would. And here's some asparagus close up. Got a little bit of red berry action going with the asparagus. These tomatoes, we didn't plant them. What we've been doing is taking heirloom stuff, and we're both busy. We both have busy careers. If we don't have time to eat an heirloom and it isn't the freshest or goes kind of bad, we basically either toss it back here, or Carol walks back here and cuts it open and just throws the seeds from the tomato around. And every year we get some tomatoes growing that we have no idea what they are. And we've eaten several tomatoes off of those guys. Here's this ditch thing I was posting about. It's really hard to see, but it starts back there at the fence, runs through here. This is where it has eaten through a berm. The ditch follows this little area. Then over here, it's basically eaten through this area of the berm. A couple of years ago, I tried to put a wine bottle thing in here. It never really took. Then the ditch heads on down, basically exits at that spot I mentioned on the path where it is, I got the rock because it's muddy. We're going to go up. I took a picture of this comfrey and sedge. This stuff's as tall as my knee too. And the sedge is 2 or 3, 4 square feet of sedge. This area back here by the stump It's probably the one that is least fun to get to, and there's nothing growing back there on purpose. Um, so we go in there now and then and try to take out the big stuff, poke anything that gets big and tall, anything that is overly invasive. Did some weeding yesterday. Got some wild chives. I think Russell mentioned they were very invasive. He said, "You sure?" And yeah, we're sure. These guys, wild chives, are going to seed. We got a bunch of them, and they're mixed in with some of that grass stuff that grows so well around here that I'm going to get rid of that. This is the next weeding project, actually, is around the stump. But got some grass, got lots of chives, more chives, and we got a couple patches of chives that have grown on their own. Like these guys here, these chives were not planted by Russell and Diane when they did the installation in 2012. And got some more chives down here. And here you can see, let me get my shot out of the way. You can see there's this little wall of mud, and then it drops, and then here it goes into the depression. So it's like a little cascade. What I figured out is this wall of mud here is actually where landscape timbers were sitting for I don't know how long, a long time. There are 2 or 3 big fat railroad tie things that were sitting here, and they got removed when the yard got redone and dug up. There's my fig. I think with as many figs as we got, we need to rename this place Fig House. Little, excuse me, echinacea. Going back to the back. Alright, this is back behind the stump in this back corner. Nothing is back here on purpose. So, it's a project for later. A lot of grass. And, you know, the native trees and whatever trees, they're growing. Got a little privet because that's all privet up there. I'm going to get on the ladder pretty soon and cut off everything I possibly can. Here's a little fig. Hopefully this guy will take off one day. He's only slightly higher than my knee. And this area, if grass and weeds didn't grow, it'd be kind of muddy. And this is one we're going to come in and do the best we can to de-weed and then just seed. We've got a lot of packets from Johnny's that have, you know, wildflower assortments, butterfly flowers. We're thinking maybe this path, this is on top of the third berm, looking at the idea of putting some of the grasses Diane mentioned. Like here's a monkey grass that survived. It wasn't here the last couple of years, but it's here this year. This whole upper stump area was landscaped with monkey grass around the edges of the railroad ties. And so every year we chop it down and trim it, and it would come back in full force. But somehow this guy popped up this year. There's a couple more around the fence. I'm going to leave them for now because I think something like that is better than bare dirt. So we're going to leave them for now until we figure out what to do with them. Here's a pawpaw. We lost pawpaw, the other pawpaw, but this one is alive and well and moving on. And here's our back corner full of weeds. This was this compost pile was started by Diane and her crew, and we basically emptied it and chopped up it a lot better. And I used a lot of this stuff to fill the ditch. it is like 99% desirable ornamental flowers and stuff. That's what's in there. The fence line's another issue. Right now I'm just going to try to kill everything undesirable on it, get rid of it. There's a lot of ornamental viney things planted on here by somebody over the years. And they're going to go. When Mooney was here, he said, "Oh, these are grapes." And he's like, "Oh, wait, no, I'm not sure they're grapes." But he had the idea of grapes. I don't know if we get enough sun back here for grapes. But this stuff is growing. And I don't know what this stuff is, but it doesn't look horrible. So I'm not getting rid of it. And I'm getting rid of this for now. I mean, it's a nice little ornamental, but it's not going to live here forever. And there's trees and crap interlaced in a chain link fence. And this is the bottle project area, saving bottles. And this stuff is an ornamental that got a pretty good whitefly thing going. And it's behind the fence. And it's pretty good size. So I'll have fun figuring out how to cut a tree down behind a chain link fence. This area, I think we could call this a vermin superhighway back here. I'm pretty sure there's rats and other stuff that live underneath the bike shed here. And in time, I want all of this to be cleared and have stuff in here that grows, but we can walk back here and keep it clear. And hopefully it'll be less attractive to rats and mice. And then there's, good old creeper. If it were ivy and it were Harvard, we would think it's really awesome, but it's creeper and it's Memphis, and nobody talks about the walls of creeper that are so traditional. This is a one-day project to get in here and decreep the bike shed. There's a fair amount growing on the roof of the bike shed also. Here's a bunch of mint bed. I'm heading back now. We haven't used the sprinkler system hardly at all. We haven't watered hardly at all. Now and then we might see some wilt in something that we really care about. And Carol has planted a lot of her, the food is back in here mainly. This is the food. Peppers, eggplant. We had a pretty good looking bunch of cantaloupes, and then we came out and they were all perfectly hollowed out. We figured that was raccoons. Got one left, and this guy might not ripen up before it gets too cold. But I got this thing down here in front of it. It's a motion detector. Somebody online says these motion detectors scare them away because they get close to it in the dark and it lights up really brightly. Here's the peach, one of the peaches. They seem taller. There's the other peach. And we really have fun with the hummingbird feeder because they will zoom right in front of us when we're at the back door. Got some blackberry action going over here. We got a lot of blackberries, and this big one just died, but we'll cut it off and it'll come back probably. And the pear tree. The pear tree is approaching the telephone line. So I guess maybe we'll just stop it somewhere around that height and maybe get Mooney out here or something to trim it properly at the right time. But it's not dead. I had to stake this guy a year or two ago because he was planted right by the straw bales, and when the straw bales rotted, he started leaning forward pretty seriously. So I just pulled him back, and hopefully the roots will take place, will root and keep him upright instead of falling forward. But yeah, this is kind of what's up with the backyard, and this is our high-tech tomato stakes. We just picked the bamboo up beside the road and tied it together with some, I think that's an old t-shirt that Carol cut into strips. So just a brief tour, FYI. Thank you very much for what you do.